Morning all and welcome to your first bite size on modelling. Today we're going to be looking at component modelling, and this is very much considering what we are going to model to our students, whereas then our subsequent bite size will tend to look more at the how around modelling itself. So here are the 5 different areas that we'll be looking at within modelling. So as we said then, today will be about component modelling. Then we'll move on to live modelling, interactive modelling, handover and modelling loops, and then student modelling. So within component modelling, we need to make sure that we have a few things in place before we can then actually start to look at different ways of modelling and different methodologies of modelling that will range from just us doing the modelling and being in charge of it, and therefore then having that movement through to the complete handover to student modelling. Now within component modelling, we are very much therefore then looking at what we are going to model as opposed to how we are going to model. So when we think about modelling, it's really important to remember that we need to have clear success criteria that stem from really explicit learning intentions. We need to make sure that our students have a really clear understanding as to what learning needs to look like so that we can then make accurate decisions around what we need to model, as well as how much depth we need to model it, as well as then the different students that might therefore then need different types of modelling as we go throughout learning. In terms of then our success criteria, we need to make sure that we have highlighted overarching concepts so that students are really fully aware as to where that learning fits in with the overall curriculum plan and in terms of their development of skills along the way. From here then we need to make sure that the content that we are delivering is really clear, so students can have a very clear idea as to what success is going to look like. If we are quite clear with an idea of what success at each stage of learning is going to look like, students can then start to really engage in models that we are going through, as well as then be in a position where they can better model for each other. And then finally, we need to consider the skills that we're going to be modelling as well. If I take into account the kind of range of learners that I've got in my classroom, but also the range of skill level that I'll have in my classroom, it really therefore then indicates to me the different things that I need to make explicit as I go through different stages of my modelling. So it might be that I need to model how to remember, it might be that I need to model how to apply or how to evaluate, and making sure that different students have access to those different levels of thinking throughout the lesson. Now again, that could be provided by me, it could be provided by other students in the room, but having this idea as to how these different components are going to come together to help me model more effectively should hopefully lead to better outcomes for the students. So when we look at each of these components to our success criteria and how we might therefore then use them to influence our modelling, we have to answer some specific questions around each element. We need to consider which concepts link to and from previous learning. This is going to allow students to engage in some metacognitive modelling so that they might be able to verbalise to each other where they've seen things before, how they've achieved different things before, the kind of strategies they've used previously. This will really help them within the planning phase of them being independent in their learning so that they can approach different learning activities based on their own previous experience. This is also true from some of the content that we'll have within our teaching and within different learning episodes as well. If content has been covered before and we're looking at some active recall, we probably don't need to do as much modelling as if we were looking at totally brand new content. So again, by considering the content that we're getting across to students, but also then considering the ability of the students, that can then have an impact on the amount of modelling that we actually need to do and the number of different examples that we may need to give students. It also gives us gives us an opportunity to hand that modelling over to students earlier in the learning process than if we were looking at something that was totally brand new. If we feel as though we have students that can cope, we can cut away from them within our teaching so that they can therefore then undertake tasks and activities totally independently of us. And then finally, we just need to consider the skills that we might need to model to students as well. Again, based on the success criteria that we are giving out, based on the learning intentions of our lessons, what skills are the students going to need, and therefore which of these skills are they going to need modelling? Now, it might not be that they need knowledge or remembering modelled to them, but when we start to think about skills of analysis or skills of evaluation, we might need to model these explicitly to our students or give them explicit scaffolds or prompts that are going to help them apply those skills much more effectively within their learning. That's all for this morning then. We'll move on in subsequent weeks to look at specific ways in which we can model, but if you do have any questions about anything that's involved in this video, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks so much.